besides the bishop getting in trouble. Yeah, that's okay. Those kinds of things are acute to me as well. It's like, so obviously they're in the mission field and things are going on, right? Is the mission field cheap? No, it's not. It requires, because even if it doesn't cost you any monies, who takes care of the families at home when the men are gone? Who's providing for them? Still costs something, doesn't it? And if you're truly doing as the Lord commands, which is what I argue that the RLDS Church stopped doing at some point, which was they were not supporting the missionaries in the field. They were not stepping in and providing that Aaronic ministry and the ministry of the bishop in checking to make sure that they weren't going without. Because there were many missionary families that did go without, and there wasn't a need for it. And that unfortunately spoke to the children of that particular missionary, and certainly helped was helped in making the catalyst of some of those children saying, I don't want to have anything to do with the church, because they didn't understand the sacrifice and the suffering that was there. Some of them did, some of them did not. But, okay, well, yes, Sister Ruth.
I think it's weird that he would say about Edward Partridge is not justified, nevertheless let him repent and he shall be forgiven, that he would tell somebody else that.
Well, yeah, so it's the reason that he's doing that is because it was known in public. So it wasn't as though it was something private. This is, if I remember right, this is to the elders, through Joseph. And so basically, the elders know. And so it's not a secret. So that's why the Lord's saying, hey, you're not justified in what you're doing over here. Your thinking isn't right. And I'll be fair to Edward Partridge, because if you want to look at this, he's just been thrust upon him, basically consecration. Well, we see that in 51, and basically the care of the saints. And so this is a very new thing to him, as well as the restored gospel. So it's like he's kind of feeling through the dark, trying to make sure he's doing the right thing, and he's also trying to make sure that everything stays solvent. And the other part that I guess I'll speak on is that Joseph was really not good. He was not talented in the area of understanding finance and or things that were there. He certainly understood the principle of abundance, but he didn't understand that you have to make sure that you're gathering as much as you're shoveling out, right? So it's like, if you're trying to feed the cows, say, for instance, and you've got more cows eating at the trough, and you've only got one guy with shoveling, guess what? Some people are going to get hungry. And that's an important thing. And Joseph had a very big heart. I'm not trying to say he didn't, but there's a awful, and I mean awful balance that the bishop is thrust upon him in his ministry, because he has to figure out what that is. And nobody wants to have to tell somebody they have to do without or have to go to that level. But that's very much what they have to do. And also, the bishop many times has to say no instead of yes, which, again, a lot of people don't like to say no, because that makes them the bad guy, even though they're not maybe the bad guy. Yeah, Brother Rick.
Just as an aside, years ago when we went to Kirtland and went through the Mormon sites there, got to see the Newell K. Whitney store. And they had a couple pages out of the ledger where people would purchase things on credit. And Joseph's name was quite prominent throughout that ledger, I'll put it that way.
Yes, it was. Yeah. So anyway, I won't go any further with that. But anyway, just some thoughts there. Okay. 8, D through F. Would someone like to read those? Yes. Sister Carol.
Behold, ye are little children, and ye cannot bear all things now. Ye must grow in grace and in the knowledge of the truth. Fear not, little children, for you are mine, and I have overcome the world, and you are of them that my Father hath given me, and none of them that my Father hath given me shall be lost. And the Father and I are one. I am in the Father, and the Father in me. And inasmuch as ye have received me, ye are in me, and I in you. Wherefore I am in your midst.
Okay. Now, to me, just real quickly, this is the really kind of a mirroring of the discourse in John 17 in many ways. There's a lot of things there the Lord's saying. Now, it's a different instance, different situation, but certainly you can see that principle of how that all works, all there. And any thoughts on this one? Okay. I could probably stand up here and talk for 45 minutes to an hour on it easily, but I won't do that to you. Just leave it there. Go ahead, Brother Doc.
One thing to note, and this brings it out, Christianity is the only religion in which God comes to humanity. All the rest, humanity is servant and subject to, even though we are also that. But never does the other gods tell them that he's part of them, and that you're part of me, I'm part of you, blah, blah, blah. And this points out very clearly that you can't bear all things now, but if you grow in grace and knowledge and truth, and that we can become one. You're in me, I'm in the Father's in me, you're in me, therefore you're in the Father. And it's a very reassuring promise. As we read earlier in this, the Father will give you the kingdom. Well, this is how it happens. It's because we become one with him through repentance, which it says grow in grace, and through obedience.
Yeah. One other thing you might note along that same line, Christianity is one of the few religions where deity actually will dwell within you. When you look at all the other religions and I'm going to call them ideologies that are out there, their God does not dwell within that person. That they don't have that ability or have any of his, if you will, power available to them per se. They'll do things for them, but not through them. So kind of an interesting thing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. 8G, someone like to read that? Okay, yes. Thank you, Carol.
And I am the good shepherd and the stone of Israel. He that buildeth upon this rock shall never fall. And the day cometh that you shall hear my voice and see me, and know that I am. Watch, therefore, that ye may be ready. Even so, amen.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. To me, it's, like you could argue it's self-evident, but it's very powerful. Very, very powerful. Because the words on it are so true. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I won't go further. I could comment further, but any other thoughts on that before we leave it? Okay. All right, we're at section 51. I didn't think we would get here. Okay. Not that it's not you guys, it's me. It's me meandering here and there. That's the deal. All right. So this is a revelation given through Joseph Smith Jr. to Edward Partridge at Kirtland, Ohio, in May of 1831. This revelation has the same background as Doctrine and Covenants 48, both being concerned with the location of the saints from the east in harmony with the Zionic principles. And then Edward Partridge was also the only bishop in the church at the time. And of course, we kind of know all about him a little bit, don't we? All right. So, where this revelation was actually given, and that's kind of washed out. Sorry about that. I didn't know that the projector was going to wash it out. Actually, it was given over in, there we go, Thompson. So it really wasn't given actually in the Kirtland area, but it's only about 12 miles away as the crow flies. And I have no idea what the roads were like or anything like that. Another spurious thing that you might want to know is in May in northern Ohio in the 1800s, it was around 50s. So it was cold, not necessarily warm like we have here. So those of you who lived up north, you know what I'm saying. All right. So specifically, this is centered around the land that Lehman Copley offered to the saints, and it was about 759 acres. And that gives you kind of an idea of where that was located at. And that's quite a bit of land, if you think about that was there, that was offered up, and so forth. And I thought that was really kind of neat overall. One of the things that I wanted to talk, let's see here, I got some notes here that I also put in here. So when they did gather, and it basically departed in mid-April of 1831, when they did cross in the lake there, they had issues because it was frozen over. And the ice had thawed a little bit, but it was really kind of a stormy journey that they had going across that lake. And it's always amazing to me that it's a lake, by the way, you know, because it's so huge. But the journey was so rough and the weather was so stormy that they were kind of seasick by the time they got on the other side where they needed to go. And so, but they did arrive safely. Of course, when we're talking about all this, you know, this is kind of that first test, you know, of leadership that the bishop has, because he's basically, you know, only been called a few months earlier to the office, but now he is being said, hey, okay, consecration. You know, Lord says, hey, you know, it's up to you. You're going to have to figure this out, and so you're going to have to take care of these saints. You're going to have to make sure that we make sure that everyone has been fed, everyone's taken care of, that their needs are sought to. And so that was a huge challenge, I'm sure, to him in that time. Maybe I should stop on that thing. You know, one of the interesting things is that does anybody know? I know a few of you do in here. Do the Mormons still do consecration? I'll tell you, I cheated. I looked it up, but you know. So what I found out was their idea of consecration is really more in the temple with temple ordinances. I couldn't really find where they had it. And their idea of consecration is really kind of interesting. So they say, oh, well, you still own that property, but if the church needs it, then the church can use it. And it was very interesting how it was worded on their official site, how they put that. Because to me, if I was a lawyer, I'd be like, wow, okay, so I really don't own that. You guys can call to use it at any time, day or night, kind of thing. Which, if it was being used for righteous purposes and so forth and so on, that wouldn't be a problem with the saints and so forth. But does kind of make me wonder a little bit. All right. Then there was one other thing that I found in here that I thought was really interesting about this time period. And it's said about this particular instance of Doctrine and Covenants 51, and that was the testimony of Orson Pratt. So Orson Pratt was present when this revelation was given, and he recounted that experience. Now, he did account it quite a few years later, but I think he's got no reason to fib on this or anything like this, even though he did go west with everyone else. He said that in that morning, Joseph was calm as the morning sun, but he said he noticed a change in his countenance that he had never noticed before. When a revelation was given to him, Joseph's face was exceedingly white and seemed to shine. The speaker, Orson, had been present many times when the translating of the New Testament, and he wondered why he did not use the Urim and Thummim. And Joseph basically, without him asking this question to him verbally, looked at him and told him that because he now understood the Spirit in such a manner as he did, he no longer needed those instruments to help him with any translation. So I thought that was interesting. Also throws a big hole in this idea of this peepstone garbage that's there, you know? And also would argue that he's a seer, right? I thought I'd get something out of Alex, but okay. All right. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting that was kind of something he wrote about that particular instance right there. The next thing is that I thought this was cool. I was able to find a picture of the, one of the valleys of Thompson Farm. So or Thompson, Ohio, I'm sorry, in the Copley Farm. So I thought that was kind of neat, just kind of get an idea where the saints were looking to be. One of the things, though, and here's Lehman Copley down here in the lower left-hand corner, if you ever wonder what he looked like. That's what he looked like. And so in May of 1831, Lehman Copeland, a convert to the church, donated 759 acres of land in the area of Thompson for some saints from Colesville, New York, to settle on. Now, that name should be familiar to you because he was a Shaker. Okay? And so he had come out of the Shaker movement to join the church. However, with all the issues that were going on, it wasn't long, and by the end of June of 1831, he revoked his offer to the saints to settle on the property, and they were directed to settle in Missouri, further on. So kind of interesting when you look at that. So, and I don't know what necessarily set him off, but I can kind of get an idea. Yes, Brother Rick.
Out of curiosity, that obviously is a modern picture. At that time, would not that have been wooded land? The thing I wondered about myself in that is that there are natural, like meadows, where you have, no necessarily trees. They just don't, for some reason, don't seem to grow in that particular area. So it could be. I just thought that the person that caught it, it was a great picture that's there. Yeah, and to your point, though, like when you go back to Massachusetts, like, for instance, I've spent a fair amount of time in Boston and Andover and Fall River and all that area in Massachusetts, and you wouldn't think, you can't see anything because there's trees everywhere. And so they literally, when you're going off the interstate, it's like this. There's trees on both sides. You can't see anything anywhere. And it just, trees are everywhere. And if a car goes off the road, well, you lose it because it went off into the trees. So that was just a dig at them. When I was up there during the wintertime, they would drive extremely fast. I'm not talking 55, I'm talking 70 and 90. I'm thinking, how are you guys keeping it on the road? I realized they weren't keeping it on the road. I got keener eyesight and started realizing that there were people that buried themselves back into the trees.
because they were going way too fast. Because I thought maybe they knew how to drive on snow and ice better than I did. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. All right. Any other thoughts on this kind of setting the context of where we are here? And this all kind of fits together from basically section 48 all the way up to 51. When we're looking at all these, they all kind of grouped together. Good. Okay. All right. Oh, yeah, I had one other thing I dug up. I thought it was kind of cool. So, it's this being consecration, these are actual copies of the consecration papers for Titus Billings. So it's his consecration deed. And there's also Edward Parcher's consecration deed. So he made one up for himself as well. I thought that was interesting. The one thing about, just fun thing about Titus Billings is on February 16th of 1817, he married, can somebody pronounce that? Because I tried. Dianthra, is that it? Diantha? Okay. Thank you. I would have butchered that terribly. Morley. And Diantha and her older brother Isaac Morley were members of Sidney Rigdon's congregation of Campbellites. So if you ever wondered how intermarried the church was, we always complain about, how, we're so small and that kind of thing. Well, it was no different really back then. You kind of got married and close to everyone. And it is interesting how that they're all so closely tied together here. All right, now we get here. All right. Would someone like to read 1A through 1C? Yes.
Hearken unto me, saith the Lord your God, and I will speak unto my servant Edward Partridge, and give unto him directions. For it must needs be that he receive directions how to organize this people. For it must needs be that they are organized according to my laws. If otherwise, they will be cut off. Wherefore let my servant Edward Partridge, and those whom he has chosen, in whom I am well pleased, appoint unto this people their portion, every man equal according to their families, according to their circumstances, and their wants and needs. And let my servant Edward Partridge, when he shall appoint a man his portion, give unto him a writing that shall secure unto him his portion, that he shall hold it, even this right and this inheritance in the church, until he transgresses and is not accounted worthy by the voice of the church, according to the laws and covenants of the church, to belong to the church.
Okay. Quite a bit there. I'll let you have the first word. Oh, Dad?
That's where the trouble really started when it come to wants and needs. That's where they begin to fall apart.
Okay. Other thoughts? Oh, Morgan?
It's interesting reading through that. The Lord put it on Edward Partridge to search it out, number one.
Mm-hmm.
But number two, he gave him some parameters of some checks and,
Checks and balances?
some checks and balances. Yeah, my brain was going to the word boundary.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But no,
that's
but
kind of
balance
same thing, yeah.
is the same, to where, just let's just say for fun, Edward Partridge couldn't just, if he was around today, be like, well, I don't like Don Burnett because he came from Oklahoma. There's, especially in that last verse, there has to be, it's the voice of the church that, where is it? Where are they? Yeah, the voice of the church. Mm-hmm. And so I just look at the scripture compared to where we were. There's no one man in charge of, you know, you're worthy to be in the kingdom.
No, they can't be. They can't be. That if you really read through the scriptures, you find that that's absolutely not. There is one God that can make that decision, but there is not. And this is the interesting thing, is even God reserves his judgment, his condemnation until the end, which I think is is so fascinating and so wonderful that he does that, because he gives you every last opportunity, because he could already see maybe the slope of the line where you're headed, right? It's like, Jim's not going to make it. You know what I mean? He gave it a good shot, but he's not going to make it. So I'm just going to go ahead and condemn him. Why put him through it? No, he allows me the opportunity to the very last day that when I stand in front of the judgment bar, there's not a point where Jim can say, yeah, but if I would have been given, or if I would have, no. There's no arguing at that point. It is what it is. Yes, did you? Okay, I got two. I'm going to do Bob, was it Barry first? Okay, so Barry first and then Bob.
Well, it wasn't just Edward Partridge by himself. He had other people that he was able to choose to help him make those decisions. He probably made the final decision, but he had, similar to our counselors, he had others to help him determine those decisions.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'd forgot about that. Titus Billings, which I showed you that slide before, he was actually one of his counselors. So, yes.
Well, the people are also beginning to be, or to understand, and should be understanding, and this is especially important in the time in which they live, that once they make a donation to the church, and receive an inheritance, they cannot take that back. They are bound by the law of the consecration and the law of the church. And with as many people becoming disenfranchised and leaving and being excommunicated and all that sort of stuff, and even being enemies to the church, they had to realize that their inheritance belonged to the church, not necessarily to them. And depending on what Edward Partridge decided according to the law of consecration, they could either have it or they could not have it. But he was going to make the decision as to what was what, and they were going to have to abide by it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting also about Section 51, and really actually from 48 to 51, is that, and we're kind of seeing here today, I know Alex and I were having this conversation, and that is our society is trying to reintroduce a caste system or a class system, where there are those who are elevated and those who are demoted. And of course, we don't believe that. The scriptures don't bear that out. But you see, even in the scriptures here in 48 to 51, where the Lord's really setting the foundation of, no, that's not how it works. There is no caste system, if you will. It's just a construct that's made up of man. All right. One thing else I might want to add, and then it's always gotten me. And did you have something too? Oh, okay. Right here it says, "For it must needs be that they are organized according to my laws. If otherwise, they will be cut off." I always felt like that should have been kind of a separate verse by itself, and stand by itself. And it turns out the LDS have it as a separate verse. I thought that was a good deal. We have a semicolon there, but I really felt like it needed to be one. And the reason I do is because if you think about that, for it must needs be that they are organized according to my laws. If you're not going to organize the church according to my laws, you're cut off. You're no longer the church. You have to follow his laws. You can't just make up Restoration Ministries, Inc. and be happy. It doesn't work that way. You can't do that. You have to do them according to his laws. So anyway, I thought this is just one of those scriptures that I felt like that points that out. Yes, Brother Don.
I find it interesting that in section 50, Edward Partridge was saying he's not in good graces, and now 51, he is in good graces, in whom I am well pleased. And so we see their hope for all of us that even if we do wander off the path, we can, of course, make our way back. But what I wanted to point out there was C, that he shall be appointed his portion, give unto him a writing that shall secure unto him his portion. Not only does that make it, it's in writing and it's done, but now I'm responsible. I have to take care of it. I have to do something with it. An example would be, I have an easement on my property up next to the road. If the city wants to come dig it out and put in a sewer line, then they have that right. They've got the easement, but I still have to take care of it and mow it. So we have our inheritance and we're responsible for it. And we've got a paper given to us that says, that's yours. Now you take care of it. You can't just say, well, okay, I'll go through the process, but then I'm going to go live my own life my way. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't. Absolutely. Okay, very good thoughts. Anybody else have any thoughts on this? Okay. My time has fled, so I'm going to go ahead and stop here. Appreciate everybody's participation, and let us make preparation for the service to come.